Hello, I'm Brennan, and if you've been following our videos, you will know what the situation is that me and my family are going through. However, I will give you a brief explanation. Me and my family have been the targets of a criminal gang for approximately the past 10 years. They have threatened our lives and have attempted to take them, and now we need your help. In this video, I'll be going over the authorities, the contact we've had with them, and why they won't help us. To attempt to simplify the situation a little bit more and make it more digestible, I've split the information into 3 sections of time. The first contact we had with authorities, and the response that we got. When the gang started getting more violent and physical, and the response we got from the authorities when we contacted them about that, and the current period of time that me and my family are going through, where we are, according to doctors, being chemically poisoned, and what the response has been, and why the situation is so dire currently. I'll start at the beginning and go through how it first went when we first started contacting the police all those years ago. At first, when we contacted police, things seemed promising. They claimed they were doing investigations. They claimed that they were even making arrests, and that they had caught several people involved with this gang with drugs on them, and that they were prosecuting them. They claimed that they had been making a lot of progress, and they claimed that because of this progress, they had a raid planned on 2 flats within our block, and that should these raids be successful, our problems would all be solved. This was many years ago, and the situation has only gotten worse since then. That was the police response at the time. However, we also contacted our local council. When we first contacted the council, we expected to receive help. However, we discovered that the person we had contacted within the council went to JM, our local drug dealer, and told him that we had made a complaint against him. This obviously put us in more danger and escalated the situation. We also expected that the council would do other things. The person who we were contacting within the council claimed that they were going to install security cameras, which they never did. They also claimed that they were fining JM for doing drug dealing within the block. Obviously, the council would need to work with the police for there to be any kind of arrests made. The police claimed they were already going to be making arrests, but that never happened. And now the council had claimed that they were going to impose fines, but that never happened either. They also said they would threaten him with eviction. That never happened either. So all in all, the police and the council at this time did nothing. Now we move on to slightly more recently, when the threats they were making started turning into actual violence, break-in attempts, and attempts on our lives. As you can imagine, when these gang members were making these threats and attempts on us, there was quite a lot of evidence. Everything from fingerprints to shoe prints left on our door from when they were trying to kick it in. However, the police didn't collect any of it. They also refused to take a lot of my video evidence. I was asked for my film evidence at one point. I provided them with some of my film evidence. However, this led to nothing. And when I asked for that police officer later on, I was told he didn't even exist. In my previous video, I mentioned an incident in which this gang pushed a number of live bugs through our letterbox, which is on our front door, leading them to go straight into our flat. When this happened, the police response was not to investigate. They didn't take any of the evidence that we had, and instead told us to move. Now, this would be the response going forward a lot. Police now no longer said they were going to investigate at all, and instead kept telling us to move. Luckily for us, the police contacted us and accidentally let slip that this gang were actually also involved in bike theft. Not just any bike theft, large-scale bike theft. Recently there was a story about how some gang members were convicted for a bike thievery ring. We believe, based on the film evidence we have and what we've seen and heard from the police themselves, that this gang that is targeting us is connected with that gang. The council, at this time, was still refusing to help. They weren't putting in any more security cameras, and in fact, we discovered that now some of the security cameras that were already located downstairs in the block weren't working anymore. So some of the people who had been committing these crimes against us now weren't even on video. With regards to moving, the police were telling us to move, so we applied through the council. However, in order to move through this method, we needed to move ourselves to a higher banding to move faster. To do this, we had to present our evidence to a tribunal, but the only way for us to present this evidence is through a particular contact at the council. I won't give this person's position or rank so that I don't implicate any kind of legal troubles. I'll be keeping things anonymous. But, just so you know, this was our only way of presenting evidence to this tribunal and our only way of processing our housing application further. However, instead of processing our housing application, this contact at our local council decided instead to create a new housing application without my mother's permission. My mother is the tenant of our current flat, so only she can make this housing application. However, the contact at our local council made it without our knowledge. He removed me and my brother from this housing application and presented it without any of our evidence, police reports, anything that we had built up over this time period. This left us with ultimately a housing application that went nowhere. Because of all the troubles that we'd had dealing with the police and the council, we felt that we needed to go somewhere else. Now, once again, I'm not going to reveal this person's position within the government. However, I will let you know that this person has a lot of authority. We tried to contact this person numerous times, but they weren't responding very fast and they weren't very helpful. Both times that we contacted them, they simply sent it back to our local area for internal investigation. Nothing happened. I will explain later why this extremely slow response time and lack of action is highly suspicious from this government figure. And now we move into the third section of time, which will be the current day, what me and my current family are currently going through. What I need to explain is Officer K. Now, I explained very briefly in a couple of shorts what Officer K's involvement in this story is, but it's very complex, and you'll need to bear with me because it's very hard to explain. Officer K has claimed a lot of different things over the time that he's been investigating this case. The first big lie that he's told has been how many times he has been to this adjacent flat that I mentioned in my previous video to investigate. As I mentioned in my previous video, this adjacent flat is where we believe the drug production and possible poison is coming from. Officer K claims he's only been there once or twice, but we've seen him go up there numerous times. On several of the occasions, he has come to us directly after being to this adjacent flat. This is to give us an explanation that there's nothing there, that the people there are perfectly normal and there's no drug activity whatsoever. However, this isn't the case. On one of the occasions, he came to us from that flat in plain clothes. No body cam, no indication that he was even a police officer. We found it very odd at the time, but it would only get stranger. On other occasions, he would come from that flat claiming to have done a thorough investigation. However, we have on recording him saying that actually he never thoroughly investigated. He claims that because he could never get a search warrant, he never did a thorough investigation and only ever went up there just to speak to the residents and have a quick look around. This is even more suspicious because he has lied multiple times now. He also claims to have been there multiple times to investigate thoroughly, but also claims that he's hardly been there at all and not investigated really because he can't get a search warrant. This conflicting information he is giving us is not very transparent and very concerning. The second lie that I want to go over from Officer K is who is living at this adjacent flat. He claims that there are 2 female nurses living at this flat. This is very odd, considering we've only seen men come and go from this flat, but this gets even stranger. He also claimed at one point that they were 2 British nurses. Then he changed to saying 1 British and 1 Latina. And then now he's changed again to saying that they are 2 Latina nurses living in this flat. Such strange things to lie about, especially considering there's no females up there. We know, because we actually had the real resident, supposedly, of that flat come and tell us who he was. A older white male who is not a nurse came and told us exactly what the purpose of that flat is: to make drugs and to poison me and my family. These lies are really starting to build up from Officer K, especially considering he also claims to know this man and know he doesn't live at that flat. That is very odd considering that man claims to live at that address. Officer K is once again lying. Why tell all these lies? As me and my mother kept reporting, because our symptoms were continuing to worsen from this poison that is coming into our flat, Officer K then decided to make up charges. He did this in order to attempt to arrest me. Of course, as I have actually done nothing wrong, there wasn't anything he could actually arrest me for, so instead he decided to bring me in for a voluntary interview. For those of you who don't know, a voluntary interview is not really voluntary. If you leave before they want you to, they can arrest you. As is, this voluntary interview was on shaky ground legally to begin with, considering it was based off of fake charges, things I had never done. Officer K then decided to leave telling me about the date of the interview until only a week before. Now, this meant that I only had a week to get a solicitor. Luckily, I was able to get a solicitor in time for this voluntary interview, and things seemed to go smoothly. Except, now, I have had to agree to never contact the police about this situation again. This is very odd for me to have to agree to never contact the police about this situation ever again, but it was what I had to do. They won't be prosecuting me or taking this case any further, and I can never report about it. However, it gets worse. In my previous video, I mentioned that one of the people who has been running this operation at this adjacent flat came up to my door and explained to me and my mother exactly what is going on. He did this while he was extremely high, and then afterwards tried to break in to our flat. We of course reported this, because realistically that's nothing to do with this situation. Some man tried to break into our flat, so we reported it. And as a result of this, Officer K threatened us again. Officer K then called my mother and said if we report anything at all, we will get arrested. Both of us. Now, not only am I barred from calling the police about anything, so is my mother. If we get attacked, we can't call the police about the attack. We can only call in the moment. According to Officer K, we can only call 999 if there is an active situation happening. Otherwise, there's no reason for us to call the police, according to him. And now, I'm completely barred from contacting the police. Seems like quite an overreaction. He called up screaming down the phone line at my mother that if we ever dared to try and call the police again, he would arrest us that day. Officer K's actions alone completely expose the corruption that is occurring here. Recently, we've been in contact with someone new at our local council, and this new person let something slip. According to this person, there has been drug problems in our block for a very long time, and the council has known all along. This was very concerning to hear, but we can't report to the council anymore either. After we had been in contact with this new person, we then heard back from some of our previous reports. They will no longer be investigating any of our reports. So now we're blocked from contacting the police, and now we're blocked from contacting the council. And this is all with no investigation. Both the police and the council have confirmed that they won't be investigating, and that they never investigated in the first place. Now, around this same time, right before the voluntary interview, I then also got contact from this government official that I previously mentioned. I previously mentioned that it was very difficult to get an appointment with this government official, and that I never was able to actually get one. His responses were slow, lethargic, and they ultimately resulted in nothing. However, the day before this voluntary interview was to take place, we suddenly got contact from this government official. He then decided that we could have a meeting. After all these years of attempting to contact him, I'd never managed to get one, and suddenly, the day before this voluntary interview was to take place, permanently silencing me from ever contacting the police again, I then got this meeting with this government official. I found this odd, and so did my mother, but we went to it. And in this meeting, he claimed to know nothing about the situation, claimed that we needed to explain everything, so we did. We explained everything we could to him. However, he contradicted himself. He then claimed that actually he did know the situation quite well, that he had read all of our previous correspondences, and that actually he knew the estate quite well, had been there numerous times. He even knew the exact directions from his office. So things were a little bit strange. Then he also claimed that he knew the council member that we had been speaking to. He then said, as a result of the meeting, things were very suspicious and he himself was concerned. So then he decided to conduct an internal investigation into the council and the police. He would keep us anonymous and hopefully try and solve the issues for us. However, He never contacted the council. And when he contacted the police, he immediately gave our names. No internal investigation was conducted as a result of contacting this government official. All he had done was lie and contradict himself numerous times. Before we move on to my final thoughts, it is worth noting that I did contact the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct. And this independent office did contact me fairly quickly, and they did actually do what they were supposed to do. They passed my information on to an internal investigation team within the police. So, thank you, IOPC, for passing my details on. This internal investigation, though, was very strange, because I was told it would be handled by one team, and then was told it would be handled by another, and that I would get contact within a few days. It's now been approximately 5 months, and I've had no contact. So, my final thoughts and final things I want you to leave this video on. There is a lot of corruption happening. We have been unable to stop it in all these 10 years that we've been here. We haven't been able to reach anyone that will help us. And now there's not even a chance for us to. We can't even contact the police or the council or certain government officials to try and progress in a positive direction. We're barred from everywhere. And this is why we need you. We've been contacting family members and friends to help try and share this story. And now, if you're watching, we're asking you to share this story. The only thing we know to do is to spread this story as far and wide as possible. The threat against our lives is very real, and we experience it every single day. This is why we need you to share this story, because this gang's influence and the corruption that we have seen doesn't just affect us, it affects everyone. We hope that you will listen and try and understand our story, and if you want, you can help support us, and we will greatly appreciate any support you can give us. We ask that you share our story, and if you want, like the video, and if you want to keep receiving updates about our story, subscribe, follow on the various platforms that I will link down below, and any support you can give us, we will greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.